So let's start with the story of more Americans volunteering for the Ukrainian army. Due to antipathy towards President Trump? That's right. Trump's confusing statements and Zelensky's attack at the White House might be factors. Since then, foreign military volunteers, not just Americans, have surged. Trump's response inadvertently increased support for Ukraine. Indeed, the Kyiv Independent reports, citing the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, that thousands applied to join elite Ukrainian units accepting foreign volunteers. So it wasn't just Americans. But Americans still made up a large portion. Many expressed shock at the U.S. policy shift. One retired U.S. soldier who applied said he couldn't sit idle when he could do the right thing. The Trump administration's pro-Russian, anti-European stance and Ukraine's response to it without yielding moved many to action. As Americans, they were stunned by Trump's actions. A volunteer who served in Afghanistan said he felt ashamed of his country. The Ukrainians are incredibly brave, doing great with limited U.S. equipment. Some say we finally decided to fight in Ukraine. So, former U.S. soldiers are now stepping up to help Ukraine? No, it's not just military personnel. A volunteer from Texas was actually a defense attorney. Completely different profession. Prior military experience? According to him, he's 40 years old with no military experience but didn't want to live as a coward. Left his wife and 2 kids in Kyiv to go. He's 40 with no experience but decided to join and fight? That's quite a commitment. Next, even China is reportedly siding with Ukraine. That's another topic you mentioned earlier. Usually seen as pro-Russia, is it different? This comes from a military blogger with 250,000 followers who shared the story on social media. Apparently, an acquaintance went to a Chinese factory to buy drones, and surprisingly, Ukrainian flags were lined up everywhere. That must have been an unexpected sight. And "Glory to Ukraine" slogans were also displayed prominently. Seeing this, they decided to cancel the drone purchase. Given such clear support for Ukraine, we're not talking about buying drones for them. Oh, and the Russians who went to buy them came back quite shocked. Another military blogger wrote that China betrayed them, as they long considered China an ally of Russia. From the outside, I thought China was on Russia's side too. But the fact that they're so openly siding with Ukraine now means they're trying to strengthen their relationship with Ukraine, right? Seems to be the case. Maybe they're looking ahead to the future of the Ukraine war. Movement around Ukraine and Russia, but has anything changed in Russia itself? Regarding Russia, there have been changes due to expectations of a conventional war. First, the ruble has appreciated, rising to 85 rubles per dollar. As a result, overseas travel has become cheaper and is now booming. Although they didn't agree to a 30-day rapid war plan, the atmosphere has completely shifted to a rush mentality. Indeed, the U.S. broad ceasefire proposal wasn't accepted by President Putin. Instead, Trump and Putin had a phone call and agreed to halt attacks on Ukraine's energy and infrastructure for 30 days. But Fox News reported that until very recently, these 2 aspects, namely energy and infrastructure ceasefire and moratorium on parliamentary shelling, had no consensus at all. And today, we've finally reached that stage. From there to a complete ceasefire, it's thought to be a relatively short distance. According to the Kremlin, after Putin's talk with Trump regarding attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, he seems to have ordered the military to stop. The complete halt of Western military aid and intel to Ukraine is said to be a condition for lasting peace, though the road ahead may still be difficult. It won't be easy, that's for sure. Anyway, let's change the subject. Right. Apparently, travel from Russia to Japan is increasing. There are lines of Russians at embassies seeking visas. Is that really the situation now? Yes. While the Ukraine war continues, European countries have stopped direct flights to Russia, and visa issuance for Russians has become stricter. But doesn't Japan also lack direct flights to Russia? True, Japan has suspended direct flights too, and routes now go through China and such. but visa fees for Russians are waived, and flight reservation confirmations and proof of travel funds aren't required. See, so it's relatively easy to visit Japan? Getting a Japan travel visa only takes 4-5 days. Plus, it's almost cherry blossom season, boosting Japan's appeal. Many tourists come for cherry blossoms, not just from Russia. Gornvuk, head of the Russian Travel Industry Union, says Russians spending holidays in Japan. They expect it to double from last year's 100,000. The passage of time really makes a difference. Japan sees fewer travelers due to weak yen, but the opposite is happening for Russia. One agency reports May holiday sales doubled due to strong ruble. Top destinations are Turkey, UAE, Egypt, Maldives, and Tunisia. You mentioned Russian tourists to Japan doubled. Have tourists to these countries also increased significantly? Tunisia's especially popular, with bookings up tenfold from last year. That's a massive increase. There's a noticeable change in Russia's atmosphere. But it's not all positive developments. Military blogger reveals income issues as donations decline. It seems like the war's over and peace has returned to Russia. Many share this opinion. Some lament Russia's continued losses on the front lines. Fewer donations indicate waning interest. Some say donations have dropped to almost zero. Furthermore, Ukrainian journalist Kazansky states, in Russia, without mobilization, fear, and propaganda, he said he would not sacrifice for the sake of the army, referring to the situation in Russia. It seems the Ukrainian military is even recruiting people with no prior experience. I wonder if there's a difference in the situation or mindset. Changing the subject a bit, I'll also explain about the F-35 fighter. Speaking of the F-35, I think there were concerns raised in Germany recently. Yes, concerns that the F-35 fighters Germany plans to acquire from the US next year might have a kill switch, right? If you're worried the US could remotely disable the F-35's functions, it makes you think twice about the purchase. German reports say even without a kill switch, the mission system allows easily grounding the aircraft. So what happened with those F-35 fighters? Actually, it's not just Germany expressing reservations. It seems Canada is also considering canceling their F-35 order. Oh, so Canada too? Yes, it looks like they may switch to procuring the versatile Gripen fighter instead. What is this Gripen you mentioned? The Gripen was developed by Sweden's Saab. It's an acronym from the Swedish words for Fighter, Attack, and Reconnaissance, also known as the JAS-39 Gripen. I see. As a multi-role fighter, it excels in both attack and recon missions. Right, it can handle various tasks from ground strikes to air combat. The F-35 was touted as cutting edge, but the Gripen is no slouch either. Seems like a viable alternative. That concludes the explanation. Did it make sense? If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel.